The Last of Us is widely regarded as one of the best games to release last generation. Yes, it did come out this generation as a remastered game, but it originally launched on the PlayStation 3. It was one of Naughty Dog's most acclaimed titles. With the second game arriving in about a month, I decided to create a video providing a summary of both the core game, the DLC Left Behind, and the comic book series that people aren't fully aware of, as well as smaller story elements that were missed by a lot of players during their first playthrough or chose not to collect all the optional documents. The story opens up with Sarah, the daughter of protagonist Joel, sleeping while waiting for her father to come home. Joel bursts in, talking to his brother Tommy about a contracting job, inferring that Joel may have some financial troubles. It's here that Sarah gives Joel his birthday present, a watch to replace his broken one. The two spend the night together and Sarah falls asleep. We then see that Sarah is sleeping in her bed and is woken up by her uncle Tommy, who is trying to get a hold of his brother Joel. Speaking frantically, the phone gets cut off and Sarah begins to look for Joel. It's here where you get to see how Naughty Dog's developers expertly provided an in-depth look at Sarah and Joel's life through the environment. Inside Sarah's room, we see soccer trophies, pictures of her friends, and a guitar, giving us a full understanding of Sarah. As you explore the house, small snippets of information amplify Tommy's worrisome message, with a news report attempting to convey the situation before being cut off, and you can literally see the explosion from Joel's room, which is also a mess, almost like he left in a hurry. Heading downstairs, things get even more strange from Sarah's perspective, with Joel's phone showing Tommy's multiple messages and hearing a barking dog cry out in pain. Joel rushes into the home trying to make sense of the situation as he frantically speaks to Sarah. Joel grabs his gun and shoots his neighbor, who appears to have gone feral. To Sarah's shock, Joel consoles Sarah about what he just did before leaving the house. Tommy arrives and Joel is quick to leave everything behind with Sarah. The three of them try their best to get out of town as Tommy explains that the military is attempting to block all routes. As they drive, the family notices many people are being attacked or attempting to leave town, but Joel is focused on getting his family out, putting his family's well-being before everyone else, even leaving a family friend behind to fend for themselves. Tommy, Joel, and Sarah attempt to cut through a shopping district, but are rammed by another vehicle. Tommy and Joel are okay, but Sarah is injured and unable to walk. Three attempt to escape on foot, evading the infected and the people running for their lives. Tommy stays behind to hold the door while Sarah and Joel run to safety, eventually meeting with a soldier who saves their lives. Unfortunately, the soldier has strict orders to execute anyone attempting to leave town and shoots at both of them. Tommy comes to Joel's rescue right before the soldier can execute him, but Sarah isn't lucky. In one of the darkest moments in gaming, Sarah dies in Joel's arms as Joel sees the light from his daughter fade.
Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. Listen to me, I know this hurts. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. All right, I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby, I know it hurts. Come on, baby, please. I know, baby, I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. No. No. No, no, no. Please. 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 Please don't. Please.
20 years later in the comic The Last of Us American Dreams, we see that all major cities have been quarantined by the military. The cordyceps infection has spread across the world and ravaged humanity, causing a global collapse. Ellie arrives in Boston to enroll into the military academy. She gets into a fight but is saved by Riley, but Ellie is blamed for the fighting when the principal arrives. Ellie is scolded for her actions and punished by having her clean a military vehicle, but is also told about the Fireflies by the principal, a local rebellion that, in the principal's eyes, seeks to destroy the order of all things. While cleaning the vehicle, Ellie discovers her Walkman is gone and assumes Riley took it, and is correct. Riley gives it back when confronted by Ellie and jokes about Ellie's bad taste in music. Ellie takes an interest in Riley and then follows her at night, seeing her sneak out. Ellie confronts Riley and forces her to take her with her or she'll alert the guards. They discuss their futures, to which Ellie has no interest in the future due to the desolate world they live in. Riley, on the other hand, seeks her own freedom, telling Ellie that she'll be forced to join the military once she turns 16, but will leave before then. Riley lightens the mood by changing the subject, asking Ellie if she ever rode a horse. Riley takes Ellie to an abandoned mall where they find an old arcade with a video game called The Turn-In that Riley is familiar with. They then turn up to meet Riley's friend who lives in the mall named Winston. Riley trades Winston a bottle of whiskey to teach Ellie how to ride his horse Princess around the mall. Riley then takes the time to steal some stuff from Winston, and Ellie develops a bond with Winston, who tells her about life before the cordyceps pandemic. When returning to the tent, an explosion is heard nearby and Winston goes to investigate. He rides off telling Ellie and Riley to return home, but instead Riley uses the walkie-talkie she stole from Winston to listen in. Ellie is annoyed that Riley used her, but Riley is more interested in the attackers, who are Fireflies. Riley wants to use this opportunity to gain favor with the Fireflies and eventually join them. Riley heads to the location and Ellie follows. They find the Fireflies are fighting with the military, and Riley and Ellie throw smoke grenades to help the Fireflies. Unfortunately, the military notices the girls and opens fire. They evade the military, but unfortunately discovered by runners. The two are successful in dodging the infected and saved by the Fireflies, but unfortunately they're tased and taken to their leader, Marlene. Marlene gives Ellie an envelope and Riley expresses her desire to join to Marlene. Marlene doesn't want her to join and tells her it's too dangerous, but in their conversation is cut short when bandits try and hold them up for their supplies. The Fireflies kill them with the help of Riley, but after the fight Marlene attempts to persuade Riley again about joining the Fireflies by telling her she doesn't know about sacrifice. Riley reveals that she killed her father after he was infected to save her mother. Marlene continues to scold Riley, and Ellie grabs a gun from one of the Fireflies. Ellie fires some warning shots, and Marlene tells Ellie to stop by name. Ellie is shocked and demands Marlene tell her how she knows her name. Marlene reveals she knew Ellie's mother, Anna, and that she's been watching over Ellie since her death, even sending her to the military academy for safety. Ellie lowers her gun, and Marlene gives Ellie her mother's switchblade. Riley and Ellie head back to the school where Ellie reads her mother's letter while gripping her blade. Riley then leaves the school in secret but has a falling out with Ellie. 6 weeks later, we come to Left Behind, where the story picks up again. Riley returns to the school and sneaks into Ellie's dorm. Ellie is cold at first for a good reason, as Riley and Ellie left on bad terms. Riley explains that she joined the Fireflies and wants Ellie to come with her to the abandoned mall again for a special surprise. If you notice the room Ellie is in, you can see it's pretty clean as opposed to many settings within the core game, showing how well the military takes care of its own as opposed to the civilians they're supposed to be protecting. When heading to the mall, Riley reveals that Marlene was testing Riley to see if she could handle being a Firefly, and she passed, with Marlene sending a Firefly for Riley to follow back, unknown to Riley, and making it official. While inside the mall, the two share personal stories and generally have a good time, while also talking about basic things like saving for a vacation to LA and surf, and paying respects to Winston, who died from a heart attack, and the military taking possession of his horse Princess, and even breaking into a Halloween store to try on masks. After a brick competition, you learn more about how Riley and Ellie left on bad terms, or more on Ellie's mom, Anna, which we learned that Marlene told Riley that Anna was a nurse for the Fireflies, and that the reason Riley had a falling out with Ellie is because she needs some space to figure things out. When heading downstairs to the maintenance sector of the mall, you can actually take a small detour into the office and find a note from Winston. It confirms that Winston was the officer stationed to protect the mall, but it got overrun with infected. Winston of course stayed, even though it's clear that the military had no interest in the mall afterwards. Riley reveals that the first part of her big surprise to Ellie is a fully electrically powered mall, allowing Ellie to finally experience the carousel and photo booth, while also giving her a joke book that the two read together. The two stumble on the same arcade from the comic series, but now all the games are lit up. Unfortunately, they're also broken. You can also see Ellie pretending to play Jack X, an infamous game from the popular Jak and Daxter series that wasn't as bad as everyone remembers. Ellie does get the chance to play the turn-in, but only in an imaginative experience that Riley commentates on while Ellie inputs button commands. Afterwards, Riley reveals to Ellie that she's leaving Boston, and the two are annoyed with one another. Ellie for wondering why Riley even came back, and Riley vexed that Ellie would even ask that. Ellie finds Riley inside a clothing store after the two separate, where Riley reveals that she came back because she wanted one more day with Ellie, and reveals her final big surprise. She stole back the water guns confiscated by the principal of her school. The two have a lighthearted competition that ends with a dance party. Riley connects Ellie's Walkman to a speaker and the two share a moment where Ellie asks Riley to stay. Riley rips off her Fireflies tags, and the two share a kiss, agreeing to leave both the military and the Fireflies together. However, the noise attracts runners, forcing the two to run for their lives. The two run towards a scaffolding, but it collapses and flings Ellie into the floor, where a runner almost kills her. Riley saves Ellie, but is pinned by another infected that Ellie kills. The two then discover they've been bitten by the runners. Riley provides two options: suicide or spend their remaining time they have together. Ellie asks about a third option, but Riley says there is none, and the two leave them all together. We then fast forward to the core game 20 years later, to be precise, from the prologue, or 3 weeks later from the end of Left Behind. The year is 2033, and we see that Joel has become a smuggler and enforcer for a woman named Tess. The two head out, track down an arms dealer named Robert who jumped Tess and stole a cache of weapons that they need. It's here that we get a graphic look at the quarantine zone through the environment and NPC's actions. The people are sick of the military's oppression, and this is seen from the graffiti all over the walls. We then see that the military is raiding a local apartment where they started testing the occupants. A woman is tested positive, and within seconds she's ejected and killed, showing that the military has zero tolerance on anyone who gets infected. Once you're tested positive, you are killed. We also get a first look at the limited supplies provided to the citizens through ration cards and the Fireflies attacking the military in broad daylight. With all the streets locked down, Joel and Tess cut off from their original path and use a variety of smuggler tunnels to get to the slums by going around the wall to bypass the lockdown. Dodging infected while on the way, Tess and Joel finally make it to the slums, but now we've gotten a good description of life here through the environment. The military is barely holding things together as more infected pile up, and the quarantine zone is only a couple of walls and gaps away from infected hordes pouring in. The only thing preventing a full-scale riot is the food the military is providing, but even that's limited. After taking out some of Robert's men, Tess and Joel corner Robert. After some interrogation, Robert explains that he sold the guns to the Fireflies because he owed them. Robert tries to negotiate for his life, but Tess isn't having it, killing him before Marlene shows up. Marlene promises to give the weapons in exchange for smuggling a valuable package, and then some. Tess and Joel follow Marlene and meet their package, a teenage girl named Ellie. Tess and Joel are understandably annoyed with Marlene and don't trust her, but Tess agrees to go with Marlene to confirm that she has the weapons while Joel takes Ellie to their safe house. Joel is successful and the two kill time before Tess rejoins them. Tess confirms that Marlene wasn't lying and that they were her final choice. Joel and Tess get Ellie outside the gate but are captured by a patrol. It's here where Ellie stabs one of the soldiers right when she's about to be tested, but says sorry while doing it, showing that despite being a survivor, she's not a killer, instantly getting timid after seeing Tess and Joel finish them off. Joel and Tess find out that Ellie is infected, but she explains that she's immune, showing a 3-week-old bite. Joel and Tess don't believe it, as everyone turns between 1 and 2 days. However, the soldiers did call for backup, and the three of them run and raid the military before stopping to catch their breath. Ellie tells them that Marlene believes that Ellie could be the cure to the infection. It's here that Tess decides to finish the job because after dealing with so much horror due to the infection, she wants even a sliver of hope, but Joel wants nothing to do with it and warns her about what's out there. But Tess knows that Joel has no interest in anything but survival, with Sarah's death eliminating any faith he has in anything but survival. The three of them cut through a huge semi-collapsed building, and it's here where we encounter the third phase of infection, clickers. In this state, the infection has blinded the human host, and they use echolocation to find prey. And they sound just as monstrous as they look. After multiple close calls, the three of them eventually make it to the museum. You can also find a pamphlet that explains the infection process of the cordyceps, detailing the ways one can get infected, signs, and procedure to terminate any infected. After reading this, I just have to ask one thing. Why are so many people walking around in infected areas with so much exposed skin? If the primary way you're going to get infected is through bites and scratch, maybe don't have so much exposed skin, just saying. Anyway, the team fights their way through the hordes of infected inside the museum. Joel gets separated from Ellie and Tess, but they do reunite, but after this, Tess becomes more jaded and aggressive towards Joel. When arriving at the Capitol building, they find that the Fireflies have been killed there by the military. Joel realizes that this is a lost cause, but Tess is inhabitant, attempting to grip onto any hope by asking Ellie if she knows where they would have taken her. Joel aggressively tries to convince Tess, to which Ellie realizes that Tess is infected. My guess is that she thought Ellie getting to the Fireflies may have yielded a chance for her to survive. Tess begs Joel, confirming that the relationship was more than just professional, to bring Ellie to Tommy, who has connections to the Fireflies, as a last request while she holds off the military, believing that Ellie can be humanity's savior and her sacrifice could mean something. Interestingly, despite hearing gunshots after the cutscene plays, there is no fight, just sound effects. Since the player never sees the scene, Naughty Dog just plays dead avatars of Tess and the soldiers. Joel and Ellie fight their way through the military, evading their capture and reaching the subway. The entire station is full of spores, and it's here that we get a confirmation of Ellie's immunity, with Ellie able to breathe in the spores without a mask. Joel and Ellie make it through, also confirming that Ellie cannot swim, which starts the first of many annoying palette puzzles. However, I will compliment Naughty Dog on their swimming controls. After reaching the end, Joel sets up some ground rules. Ellie does not mention Tess ever, talk about his past, and she listens to everything he says, reinforcing Joel's position when dealing with grief. Never mention it. Ellie is much more mature and takes the situation in stride, agreeing with Joel since she has no choice and feeling responsible for what happened despite it not being her fault. Joel knows where Tommy is, but it's too far to walk, so they need to obtain a car, so he decides to head to town where a fellow smuggler named Bill lives. He owes Joel some favors, and Ellie and Joel fight their way inside Bill's town. While inside, Ellie highlights her fascination with the world before the infection, including talking about the same game that her and Riley played at the arcade, but never mentions Riley's name, showing that she's still in mourning and doesn't entirely trust Joel yet. The two eventually meet Bill, who saves them from one of his traps. Bill, acting smart, handcuffs Ellie and checks on Joel for infection. After a mature exchange of words, Joel calls in his favor. Bill reluctantly agrees, but they need to grab a new battery from a military vehicle that crashed in his town before they can get the car working again. They fight their way to Bill's armory and home, which happens to be a church, which I took as Bill being religious despite showing no signs of it. I mean, the church is well maintained, with no broken windows, and a frontal area that is mostly left unchanged. Bill also tells Joel about his partner, who he had a fallen out with, and tries to convince Joel that the only way to remain alive is to remain alone. It's also here that Bill teaches Joel how to use a nail bomb and make it, which is incredibly helpful. The three of them fight their way through hordes of infected. However, when they reach the military truck, it has been picked clean, with everyone trying to find their way out of the school and encountering the final stage of infection. Called a bloater, these creatures have been infected for nearly a decade without dying and can kill Joel with ease if he gets too close. With the cordyceps covering their whole body and acting as armor, the best tactic is to burn them alive before pumping them with lead. The three of them eventually make it to a house where they find Bill's partner, Frank, has committed suicide after being bitten. Bill covers his true feelings by pointing out the bites, but you can tell he's just trying to stop himself from crying. Inside, Ellie finds a working truck, confirming Frank stole the battery before he got bit. Frank did leave one last note before dying, confirming that Frank wanted to leave town but Bill didn't, but Bill, being stubborn, crumbles the note after reading it. With the help of Bill, Ellie and Joel make it out of town, but stop short to let him out. During this entire time, Joel never mentions Tess's death to Bill. He does offer his condolences for Frank, and Bill gives him one last present, a siphon for gas, before telling him this makes them even and to leave his town. In the next cutscene, we start to see that Joel and Ellie are starting to like each other, with Ellie sharing that she stole some stuff from Bill, including a cassette and a comic book. It's also here that we get a confirmation that Frank was Bill's lover, when Ellie starts to read a nude magazine featuring guys. To be honest, when I played this game for the first time, this completely went over my head until someone told me. The two make it to Pittsburgh, but are ambushed by hunters. Joel recognizes the tactic too slow and gets boxed in. After a deadly fight against the hunters, Joel and Ellie attempt to escape their camp, finding bodies, a stash of supplies, and clothing from other victims. Ellie also realizes that Joel had an understanding of their tactics to an uncomfortable degree, quickly making the connection that he used to be a hunter, and when Joel was asked about it by Ellie, he confirms it. The two see that the only way out of town is through a bridge in the distance. Joel and Ellie fight their way through waves of hunters, and they also find out that these were the same people who overthrew the military in this quarantine zone. It's also here that you get a first snippet of what it was like to be a military soldier as opposed to a civilian, with Ellie making note that rations in Boston were never low, but according to Joel, and from what we saw in the beginning of the game, they had shortages all the time and people knew the military were hoarding supplies. You'll find more disturbing messages of survivors trying to get out of the hunters' camp and the war with the military, with bodies of the soldiers still on the street and a message from a mother who took up arms simply to kill soldiers because her son was killed by them. Joel and Ellie decide to cut through a hotel and avoid the streets after seeing a military vehicle armed with a 20mm weapon patrolling the streets. When inside, Joel and Ellie get separated after an elevator collapses, Joel having to restart a generator and find a keycard to unlock an electrically locked door in order to get back into the upper floors of the hotel is extremely difficult. Stalkers hunt down Joel, and there's a bloater down here as well. My tactic was to find the keycard first and use the closed area to funnel the stalkers into my location. Once out of the basement, Joel takes out some more hunters before one of them ambushes him. Close to death, Ellie saves Joel, but to Joel's annoyance. Despite Ellie saving Joel's life, his attitude annoys Ellie, who feels like Joel doesn't trust her. After leaving the hotel, Joel decides to show Ellie he does trust her by giving her a rifle and having her cover him while he takes out a party of hunters. Ellie is successful and Joel decides to give her a gun. In the following scene, we see victims being gunned down by the military vehicle modified by the hunters, with a woman begging for her life before being executed. Joel and Ellie make it through town, taking out hunters, but eventually almost get destroyed by the military vehicle. Joel and Ellie evade the vehicle and eventually meet up with a group of survivors, brothers Henry and Sam. Henry attacks Joel assuming that he is one of the hunters, but after seeing Ellie quickly realize he isn't one of them since the hunters do not keep children. Henry suggests they work together to Joel's refusal, but Ellie changes his mind. The brothers come from Hartford, but after the military left the zone, it got overwhelmed with infected. The brothers came into the zone after one of their group members advised looking for supplies inside the city. They were ambushed by the truck and the hunters. Now they're scattered across town. Two of them got gunned down as we saw earlier by the truck. After avoiding the truck and killing some of the hunters, the brothers opened their hideout. In the executive office, they got the key from killing one of the hunters. Fun fact, you can hear one of the hunters talking about finding an entire military locker full of food and splitting it with a fellow hunter. It's likely that Henry killed this person, as the brothers find a stash of food inside as well. We also get insight about the hunters from a document in this area. They were a militia who overthrew the military in this quarantine sector, but eventually decided to become hunters after some teenagers killed a family for supplies. Those who posed the new rules were killed, meaning the people you're fighting are the kids from the military school now grown. While inside Henry's office, he tells Joel of their plan to find the Fireflies and eventually join up with them. Their goals align and they decide to work together to get out of town. Henry has a plan to kill the skeleton crew of hunters who guard the bridge's entrance only at night. The plan is a success for the most part. After getting through the first gate, the military truck enters and almost kills everyone. The group almost makes it, but the ladder leading to the bridge breaks. Henry decides to leave Joel to save his brother, but Ellie remains. The two fight some hunters and flee across the bridge. However, the bridge has been destroyed and Joel decides to take a stand with Ellie, but Ellie wants to jump into the river. Joel doesn't want to risk it because they're too high up and Ellie cannot swim, but Ellie does it anyway and forces Joel to jump as well. Joel wakes up on a local beach with Sam and Ellie looking over him and Henry is ecstatic. Joel is naturally angry and threatens Henry with his gun, but Henry knows Joel won't shoot him, explaining that he wasn't going to risk Sam and he would have done the same for Ellie. Also, Henry was the one who saved Joel and Ellie from drowning. The two of them rejoin the brothers and try to get to the radio tower where Henry and Sam's group are supposed to meet. Inside the boat, Joel will find a document written by a sailor named Ish, who ran low on supplies and took refuge inside the sewers, with his story being told from optional documents inside the sewers. The group heads inside the sewers since it's the only safest option to get to the radio tower. When inside, you learn that Ish started a community inside, and if you find the hidden documents, you get to read about how it fell. As Joel and everyone travel through the ruins of Ish's community, you find out that infected got in. Some were lucky to escape, but a lot weren't, with Joel finding a room full of children that were killed by one of the survivors out of mercy. After being trapped, he killed the kids and then himself to spare them from starving to death or being killed by the infected. Eventually, Joel triggers a trap which separates him and Sam from Ellie and Henry. With no way to open the door and clickers on the way, the two separate for the time being. Here, Joel deals with a lot of stalkers with Sam, and eventually the two reunite with Ellie and Henry, who are still running from the clickers. The two of them eventually make it to the entrance of the sewer system. Henry and Joel force Ellie and Sam to take the window above the door and unlock it from the outside while they hold off the infected. Joel and Henry make it outside, where everyone sees that Ish and his surviving community did leave a message warning anyone who comes by about the infected, but only from the front entrance. The group heads into the suburbs to locate supplies and find the final messages of Ish. It's in this community that Ish convinced the people that he was actively trading with to come live with him. As the homes were often targeted by bandits, the people took Ish's offer. It's also here that we learn the aftermath, that someone screwed up and a bunch of infected got in and surprised the community, which is why they were overwhelmed so quickly despite being so organized. Ish and a few survivors made it out, with Ish feeling responsible for what happened because he convinced all of them to move in with him. Despite this, Ish can't lose his faith and decides to go on, not for himself but for the survivor named Susan and the surviving kids. As you go from house to house gathering supplies, you can listen to Sam and Ellie bonding by sharing experiences, asking Joel and Henry about the world before the infection, and even see them play darts. In some optional dialogue, Joel does tell Sam and Henry about Tommy, and they all agree to travel together even after reaching the tower. Heading deeper into the suburbs, the group encounters a hunter sniper. Joel inches his way towards the sniper's position, often using the houses as cover. Interestingly, if you never use the houses, the enemies in that area will never spawn, so you can avoid them and only fight the final set of enemies. When reaching the sniper's position, Joel kills a handful of hunters and then the sniper. Things get worse as the hunters from the city have followed them into the suburbs. Joel uses the sniper rifle and his position to cover everyone, but once the military truck shows up, things become dire. The truck runs out of ammo and the passengers start throwing Molotov cocktails, giving Joel the perfect opportunity to destroy the vehicle, and good riddance. In true cocky fashion, the group stands around instead of regrouping. The loud sounds have attracted the infected around the surrounding area. Joel tries to use his position to kill as many as possible, but too many show up. The team then uses the back entrance to escape from the infected. Eventually reaching the radio tower, Joel shares a story about Tommy's birthday to Henry and Ellie about how he got him Harley motorcycles to ride cross country, as per Tommy's request. Henry shares his desire to ride one of them enthusiastically. It's a very somber moment, especially considering how much they've been through, having a chance to smile and laugh after facing death multiple times. Ellie leaves to see what Sam is doing. Sam is taking inventory of their food and asks Ellie how she's always brave. Ellie confesses that she's afraid of ending up alone, while Sam expresses that he is afraid of the infected and becoming one of them while remaining conscious with no control of his body, believing that some of the infected may be going through this. However, Ellie, who once believed this, reassures Sam that that person in that infected body is long gone and there's no way they're coming back. She then gives Sam the toy he grabbed while in the city that Henry forced him to leave behind. When Ellie leaves the room, Sam reveals that he was bitten by an infected. The next morning, Ellie goes to wake Sam, but the infection has taken full hold, showing that it acts faster in children and attacking Ellie. Henry, in a state of shock, just watches while Joel immediately tries to kill Sam, to which Henry intervenes. Joel decides to take the risk a second time before Henry shoots Sam. Henry, completely broken, starts to talk to himself as Joel tries to convince him to put down the gun. Henry blames Joel for what happened and then commits suicide. Ellie and Joel eventually make it to Jackson County, Wyoming, where Joel tells Ellie that Tommy was a Firefly but left. He also tells Ellie that the two had a major falling out and haven't spoken in years. Ellie and Joel cross a hydroelectric plant, and the player can stumble upon a small grave left behind by some survivors. It's here that Ellie tells Joel that she wants to talk about what happened between Henry and Sam, but Joel, being Joel, doesn't want to deal with it, always running from the past as usual. The two stumble on Tommy and his settlement, who are trying to repair the plant. Tommy and Joel reconnect, with Tommy even giving Joel a photo of Sarah after returning home and gathering some of their items. Joel refuses, as expected, and after a short tour of the plant, petting Buckley, who is the goodest boy, Joel tells Tommy of Ellie's immunity and how he wants him to take her to the Fireflies. Tommy refuses because he has a family and refuses to let his people take that risk. It's also here that Joel reveals that both he and Tommy were hunters before their falling out. Tommy was unable to live with himself afterwards and left Joel to join the Fireflies. Their conversation is left unfinished as Joel helps Tommy defend the plant from invading bandits. It's after the fight that Tommy decides to take Joel's offer to transport Ellie to the Fireflies, to his wife's vexation. Ellie puts two and two together and runs off, feeling betrayed by Joel. Joel gives chase with Tommy, eventually reaching a local ranch that is surprisingly still standing. Inside, Ellie tells Joel how he's the closest person to her, and without him, she'll just feel more scared and alone. Joel tries to tell Ellie that she'll be safer with Tommy given his expertise in the area and his connection with the Fireflies, but Ellie just doesn't want to listen. Ellie mentions Sarah, and Joel doesn't take it too lightly, telling her that she is not his daughter and he is not her father, and they are going their separate ways. Tommy burst in, telling them that the bandits that they've been fighting have tracked them to the ranch, and both Joel, Tommy, and Ellie fight them off. After riding back, Joel has changed his mind and decides to take Ellie to the Fireflies himself. Tommy tells Joel that the Fireflies have a base of operation at the University of Eastern Colorado before heading out with one of Tommy's horses. Joel spends the time during the long ride telling Ellie about football, and when at the university tells her about the place, even revealing that Joel wanted to be a singer when he was younger. Ellie begs Joel to sing, but he refuses, for now. They even talk about how they named their horse Callus, which is a great name to me, but Joel doesn't like it. When inside the university, Joel uncovers that the students attempted to hold out as much as they could, but like always, supplies ran thin and some were infected. We find a large breeding ground within the university and a bunch of infected around the school. We also see that the military used the zone as a medical zone before abandoning it. Joel and Ellie eventually make it to the science building and find the Fireflies have abandoned the facility. While inside, Joel and Ellie find recordings of the lead researcher and a bunch of monkeys who are scavenging for supplies. When playing the researcher's recordings, they learn that the Fireflies relocated, but during the process, he got bitten by an infected monkey that they were using for tests. Joel and Ellie find the researcher's body and recorded that reveals that the Fireflies are in Salt Lake City before they are attacked by scavengers. Interestingly, if you look at the body, you can see that he committed suicide by shooting himself in the head with a bullet wound and blood spatter on the window. The developers actually created an entire custom model just for this one scene. Joel and Ellie fight their way through the scavengers, but Joel is ambushed and falls from the second floor, getting impaled when he hits the ground. Severely injured, Joel attempts to get through the building with Ellie. Ellie really holds her own here, even taking a pipe to the face like a boss. The two make it out, but Joel succumbs to his wounds. It's here where the modern section of Left Behind takes place. Ellie takes Joel to an abandoned mall and does her best to treat the wound, leaving Joel to search for medical supplies. She finds a pharmacy and obtains a keycard, but finds that everything has been looted. Ellie sees a military helicopter and decides to head to it. It's also here where you can find out what happened to the crew of that copter. The first document confirms the helicopter was transporting an infected patient that the crew didn't know was infected, led by Captain Reagan. Larry Caulfield fought the infected and the helicopter crashed. Larry kills the infected but gets bit in the process. He accepted his fate and committed suicide as according to the document and military protocol. Ellie is unable to get past the electronic gate and must find her way to restore power. It's here that you discover another letter. Private Ellis was bitten, and instead of following protocol, Captain Reagan decided to amputate his arms in hopes of saving his life. Ellie heads to the loading dock, restarts the generator, and fights a lot of stalkers. We also get another note from Reagan confirming that Larry did not take his own life. Instead, Ellis held him down while Reagan executed him, with Reagan wondering if she should just leave as Ellis is taking a turn for the worse due to the massive blood loss from the amputation. When opening the gate, Ellie can obtain a voice recorder from Reagan. Reagan has been taking care of Ellis, who is becoming increasingly more paranoid and delusional due to the massive blood loss. Reagan is beginning to lose faith and tempted to leave Ellis, but decided to turn back and come back to the mall, praying to God that he gets better and deciding to take care of him as he is the last of her crew and therefore her family. Ellie secures supplies from the helicopter and heads back to Joel. However, the bandits from the university have tracked them down. It's also here where you get the final set of documents about Reagan's fate, with her body found in a side area gripping a photo of the crew. Ellie later finds a trail of blood leading to a vent where you find Ellis's body and a recorder. It confirms that Ellis killed Reagan after reaching for her gun, believing she was going to kill him, but in reality, she was going to fire on the incoming infected. The amputation was a success, but due to the lack of supplies, killing Larry, and heavy blood loss, Ellis became increasingly more delusional and thought she was going to kill him. Ellis ran into the vent after escaping the infected that Reagan was going to shoot, but unfortunately ripped open his stitches and bled to death. Fighting her way through the infected and bandits, Ellie eventually reaches Joel and uses the supplies to keep him alive before leaving the mall. Winter has started officially, and Ellie has been hunting and taking care of Joel while he recovers in a nearby neighborhood, but things are looking dire. Ellie finds and kills a buck before meeting more survivors at the sawmill, where the buck dies. David and James want to trade for some meat. They make a deal with Ellie in exchange for some meds. She'll give them some of the meat. James goes to get the meds, and David waits at the side where Ellie disarms him and takes his gun. The two take shelter in a small room inside the sawmill, but unfortunately are ambushed by infected. David saves Ellie, showing he had a pistol all along, and the two begin a long and exhausting fight against the infected inside the sawmill. Ellie and David are successful in killing all the infected before taking the time to talk inside the room with the deer. It's here that David reveals that the people Joel and Ellie killed at the university and mall were indeed his men. James returned unknown to Ellie mid-conversation and had a pistol pointed at her head, but David tells him to put it down and give her the meds. The two go their separate ways, but you know this is temporary. Ellie returns to Joel, who's on the brink of death, and Ellie administers the medication. Later, Ellie wakes up to see that David and his men have tracked her, but Joel is in no condition to fight or be moved. She lures them away, but in the process loses Callus. That poor horse, you're now with Sovereign. Ellie fights her way through David's men, but is ambushed by David and captured. Ellie wakes up in their camp and it's revealed they are cannibals. James is chopping a human corpse up and David enters, giving her some of the deer they killed. David attempts to convince Ellie to join them, but not for the reasons you might think, revealing his perverted feelings towards Ellie, and Ellie using this opportunity to break his fingers and try and escape. David, now angry, decides to kill her and use her for meat. Joel wakes up and kills some of the hunters around the house, eventually taking a few hostages, and in a very brutal interrogation scene, finds their hideout and learns that Ellie is David's new pet. Joel viciously kills them both after getting the information.
I believe him. No, wait!
Ellie, about to be killed, bites David and reveals she's infected, but not immune. They see Ellie's infected wound, and she uses the opportunity to kill James and escape. What follows is Ellie attempting to evade David's men while a blizzard rages on. Ellie makes it to a restaurant where David ambushes her again, this time deciding to sadistically toy with Ellie as you play a game of cat and mouse while the restaurant burns. Joel reaches the town and finds out the town has been kidnapping people for food, finding a large amount of clothes and bodies hanging in a meat locker. Joel sees the burning restaurant, and inside, Ellie is fighting for her life. Ellie tries to reach for his machete, but David regains consciousness before she can get it and pins her to the ground, telling her to give up. It's unclear what David intended to do in this situation, but before it can happen, Ellie reaches for the machete and chops away at David as he gives one final scream. Joel enters the restaurant and finds Ellie hacking away at the corpse. He tries to comfort her and break her out of her berserk rage, and does so as he grabs Ellie and holds her close. The two leave the settlement, but David has left a scar on Ellie that will never heal. Ellie and Joel eventually make it to Salt Lake City, finding another abandoned quarantine zone. It's here that Joel and Ellie share a lot of profound moments, with Ellie still closed off after what happened with David, but eventually she begins to open up. Ellie and Joel see some giraffes and even pet one of them, the two sharing a moment of happiness before reality sinks in again. Joel offers Ellie a choice to leave everything behind and return to Jackson where Tommy's settlement is located, but Ellie is fully committed to following things through after so many people died getting her there, and of course the traumatic moment with David. They make it to another medical zone within the city where Joel shares some details about the early days of the cordyceps infection and his shutdown after Sarah died. Ellie gives Joel the photo Tommy had of him and Sarah, saying that she stole it after it was shown to her, with Joel finally accepting that he cannot run from the past anymore. The two enter a tunnel, which is always a good idea in a zombie apocalypse, and sneak past, or if you're feeling brave, fight your way through the hordes of infected. They get to a high flow river in the tunnel and Joel gets trapped inside a bus. Ellie tries to save him, but the bus topples over and Ellie loses consciousness. Joel swims and attempts to revive Ellie by performing CPR, but the team of Fireflies that located them, in their brilliance, decides to knock him out because, you see a child unconscious while someone performs CPR. You should definitely take violent action against that. Joel wakes up inside St. Mary's Hospital where Marlene is shocked to see him and Ellie alive. Despite Marlene reassuring Joel that the doctors can't create a cure from Ellie's immunity from the infection that grows in her, Joel notes that the infection is all over the brain and realizes it will kill her. Marlene spares Joel's life and has the same guy who hit Joel while he was giving Ellie CPR escort him out. I make note of this because Joel overpowers the douchebag and kills him, but not before he gives him the location of the operating room. What follows is Joel fighting and sneaking his way through dozens of well-armed and armored Fireflies. You do get a new assault rifle and find out more about Marlene's journey in the Fireflies. Turns out the organization is on its last legs. Marlene is simply the next person in command, and most of the members were killed in Boston by the military. A mutiny may be on the horizon. However, Ellie's survival has given the Fireflies hope, and Marlene hope that their work is not for nothing, with Marlene annoyed with the fact that she has to kill Ellie to get the cure and fail her mother where she made a promise to her that she would protect Ellie. Joel fights his way to the operating room and kills the lead doctor and takes Ellie. In an emotionally charged scene, Joel runs from the Fireflies and heads to the garage where Marlene is waiting. She tells Joel that this is their last chance to save humanity, trying to appeal to both his morality and Ellie's final wishes, that she would rather die saving people than in infected or survivors. The next scene is cryptic as it shows Joel driving away before showing Ellie in the back seat, revealing that Joel didn't take Marlene's offer, and when she let her guard down, Joel instead shot her. Ellie is unaware of what happened and Joel lies to her, telling her that the Fireflies have given up after finding multiple people who are immune and failing to replicate their immunity. We then see that Joel murdered Marlene to ensure that she could never track them down and essentially destroyed the Fireflies. We then cut to Ellie and Joel heading back to Jackson. Ellie is acting differently, speaking in a very soft tone while Joel talks openly for the first time about Sarah. When close to Jackson, Ellie stops Joel and tells him about Riley, about how she was with her when the two of them got bit and decided to wait it out together and lose themselves. However, Riley died and she didn't. It's here that Ellie confronts Joel and makes him swear that everything he said about the Fireflies was true, to which Joel says yes. Ellie's gaze is up to interpretation. Some say that she blindly accepts Joel's answer as she has grown to trust him like a father, whereas others have decided that she is uncertain that Joel is even telling the truth. But we'll surely find out in The Last of Us Part 2 whether this is true or not. This is where the game ends, and will we have to wait for The Last of Us Part 2? Set 5 years later, Ellie has grown up, starting a new relationship, and Jackson has become a thriving community. But like most things in this very cruel world, nothing remains peaceful for long. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. Please leave a comment, a like. Also check out my other explaining videos. I did a video on the cordyceps infection in The Last of Us. I have an entire no commentary playthrough. I will have a no commentary playthrough for The Last of Us Part 2, including doing a live stream. And I also have a bunch of explained videos, especially for Days Gone, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, Journey to the Salvage Planet, and so much more. Check out all those videos in the link below. Till next time everyone, stay awesome and thank you for joining me.